Yeah, at the outset, I must thank and my regard to Nirmal sir, who has been mentor and father figure to me. And I must thank Mohit for inviting me in delivering one of my favorite topic, I have a deep interest in it. And as I already told, I am a part of Nirmal alumni group. I worked for 2 years in Nirmal Hospital. The disclaimer is that I am not a pediatric dermatologist. I am just a practicing pediatrician and having a great interest in pediatric dermatology field. And this presentation is mainly made for the pediatrician's perspective so that they can get a better view of diagnosing these cases and referring them to the appropriate dermatologist if required. And the disease not only is disease of skin, but it has a tendency to go into allergic march and then atopic march, and then we can have allergic rhinitis and asthma as a comorbidities or associated existing system. And now a lot of progress has been made in this subject regarding its pathophysiology and development of the disease. And hence, there are newer developing modalities of the treatment which probably we will be getting in coming years. Those modalities are already in use in certain countries where the disease incidence is quite high. So what is atopic dermatitis? It is one of the most common chronic skin condition of childhood, and it affects all ages. Contrary to the fact that it was believed to be the disease of infants and children, but as we are getting more and more knowledge, we are seeing this disease more and more in adulthood also. So nowadays, cases of adulthood atopic dermatitis with chronicity are being more and more reported. There is a constellation of atopic disease in which 66% of children have mild to moderate disease. And most of the cases can be dealt with pediatrician. That's why I brought this topic here. The word atopy is derived from atopia. That is a Greek word, which it does mean out of place or a different thing. This term is coined by Coco and Koch in 1923. In 1933, Weiss and Sulzberg coined the term atopic dermatitis for the first time. So in pathophysiology, like there is a continuous ongoing debate, like the hen came first or the egg came first. For example, the disease is from outside in or inside out. This disease is a combination of genetic, environmental factor and host interaction, which leads to an increased risk of atopic dermatitis. So now coming to the first outside in hypothesis. In this hypothesis, it is believed that there is some breach somewhere in the skin barrier because of some genetic or environmental factor which puts these kids to a more risk of atopic dermatitis. There are many points in favor of this hypothesis because many of the patient, it has been seen that there is a filaggrin mutation in the stratum corneum which leads to increased permeability of the skin and hence activating the immune system. But the contrary to the fact that it is from outside in those kids where the skin was damaged and there is a lot of scratching, there is a lot of skin lesion, the pathology was found to be quite active, whereas even in the normal skin where the disease was not active, the same sort of changes, the barrier dysfunction and activation of the immune pathways were noticed. So it cannot be purely from outside in hypothesis, it has to be something else. So what are the skin barrier dysfunction which are predictive of atopic dermatitis? So there is a defect in filaggrin and ceramide. There is a deficiency of lauresin, involucrin and claudin gene. These are the protein which maintains the moisture of the skin. There was a study, large study enrolling 1900 infants where the total body water was measured and the loss was measured. So the loss on day 2, second month of life and 6th month of life was measured, and they found later on that those who had a loss of water which was more was significantly correlating with atopic dermatitis. So it was correlated that it can be predicted with the percentage of the total water loss. So probably there might be some factor which was causing this water loss and leading into atopic dermatitis. There are other factors in the barrier dysfunction like gene mutation, as we already discussed, filaggrin mutation, then family history. 70% of these kids have some kind of a atopy history in the family. Environmental triggers like irritant and allergens, which amplifies the protease activity, increases the pH and leading into more and more skin damage. Then when there is a reduced humidity level, which can further deplete the filaggrin level and make the condition worse. So these are the environmental factors which act hand in hand with other factors. Now the second hypothesis is inside out hypothesis. It presumes that there is some immune pathways which are defective, which are going on inside the body and leading into the immune cell activation, cytokine activation and skin damage. So the damage is from within. So this hypothesis is postulated because there is a predominance of Th2 cells in these patients. Even with the normal skin, they have a predominance of Th2 type of immune response, and hence they later on develop other allergic disorders also like AR and asthma. There is a role of PDE4 also, which we will be discussing how it can help in the management later on. So we can say the atopic dermatitis results from a combination of barrier defects and immune dysregulation, which leads to inflammation. There are several environmental or risk factors which are predictive or protective to the atopic dermatitis. Factors which increases the risk are like climate, low outdoor temperature. We know that the condition worsens in winters. Then urban setting. This is a very significant thing because in Western world we are seeing more and more predominance of atopic dermatitis as compared to India. There are other factors also contributing to this, but one of these, industrialization, is a big factor in increasing the incidence of atopic dermatitis. Then diet like Western diet and fast food, obesity, outdoor pollutants, tobacco smoking, skin exposure to the irritant and pruritogens, and prenatal antibiotic exposure. That has also been contributed to the etiology. The factors which are protective are climate, which is higher outdoor temperature, like little warmer climate with a little good humidity. Then diet, which is inclusive of fresh fruits, egg, milk, fish and omega-3 oils, probiotic and prebiotics. Then there is of course hygiene hypothesis. As we all know, this hypothesis stands true in many cases. People living with the farm animals, dogs and rural settings, they're less exposed to this disease. If you talk about the prevalence of the disease, this is as I told you, this is the most common skin disorder in infant and children, accounting for around 17% of pediatric population world over, especially in urban settings. It is more common in urban area and in Western countries where the incidence may be as high as up to 40%. It constitutes about 28.46% of all skin diseases in India in pediatric age group. I'm talking about only pediatric OPDs. There was one study which was quoted in some of the textbooks. The disease is less severe in India, but nowadays it is gradually increasing, and that I also see in my OPD day to day. The factors which protects are like breastfeeding. There is a different climate, good humidity, food habits, clothing, lifestyle, and maybe genetics. And most important thing is underdeveloped industrialization in many settings. This is one of the first manifestations of allergic march, and in these patients, there is a coincidence or allergic march to asthma in around 30 to 50% of subsets. As we can see that 20 to 35% of patients have asthma, 34% of patients have allergic rhinitis, and 10 to 37% of the patients have food allergies or eosinophilic esophagitis. This is according to this study which was published in Journal of Allergy. So there are three main cardinal features of atopic dermatitis, which are hallmark of the disease. One is pruritus. You cannot have atopic dermatitis without pruritus. In pediatric age group, of course, we recognize it or not. Pruritus is a cardinal feature. Then chronicity. The disease is not a acute and remitting disease, it's generally chronic disease. There are many phenotypes of the disease which we will see later on, but the chronicity is one of the most important thing. Then there are age specific features, which the disease has three phases. First, the infantile phase. In infantile phase, it presents very early, around 1.5 to 2 months of age. There is intense itching. In very young infant, itching may not be obvious, but the child is discomforted. Then there are erythema, papules, vesicles, oozing and crusting all over the places. It begins on cheek, forehead, scalp, then gradually goes to tongue, and extensor aspect of the body and extremities, they are the most affected places with significant xerosis. The disease typically spares the groin and diaper area. This is one of the very important differentiating factor with other diseases. The disease takes the shape of nummular derma, round coin-shaped lesions at around 1 year of age. So this is like typical photograph of infantile phase disease. You have a lesion on cheek and extensor aspect, and this is one of the moderate to severe atopic dermatitis where large body surface area is involved. Then it progresses into the childhood phase, which is from 2 years of age to puberty. The lesions are more lichenoid, thick, chronic lesions, papular eruptions. It involves wrist, hand, ankle, feet, antecubital and popliteal fossas. These are the flexural areas which are more involved in during this phase. On face also, we find more of the lesions not on cheek, but they are near periorbital and perioral areas. In perioral areas like lip smacking dermatitis, when there is a contact of saliva, this is also one of the manifestation of AD. Then in this there is a obvious severe pruritus. We can see in this photograph that these are the typical lesions of atopic dermatitis, peri and perioral and periorbital lesion, sparing the cheek most of the time. And this is the flexural area involvement. Then it enters into adult phase, which is lasting from puberty to adulthood. In this time also flexural fold, face, neck and hand, they are mainly involved. And typically the dorsum of finger and toes are more involved. These are the dry erythematous lichenoid lesions. There is generally hyperlinearity of the palms and soles also, very well obvious at this stage of the disease. So once we see this disease more often in our day-to-day practice, we recognize it very easily. But there are certain diagnostic criteria which helps to diagnose this disease more often. Diagnosis is made, this is one of the criteria by Hanifin and Raika. The diagnosis is made when there are 3 major and 3 minor criteria met. As I told you, major criteria are pruritus, typical morphology according to the age and the distribution of lesion, chronic and chronic relapsing course, and then there is a certain personal or family history of atopy. These are the minor criteria which I will not go into detail, but there are few things like xerosis and ichthyosis and skin hyperactivity, elevated IgE. These are the corroborating things, many things which can be there, which can also contribute to the diagnosis of atopic dermatitis. And there are certain infectious complications which are quite often seen and which may be the cause of concern to the pediatrician as well as the caregivers, because these patients have a high incidence of colonization with Staph aureus. There are many theories postulated, but there are few studies which depict that 93% of these patients of atopic dermatitis with even mild to moderate disease are harboring Staph aureus as a carrier, as compared to around 10% in normal cases. And these Staph aureus are the major causes of flare, which we should all recognize. Many a time we miss this and we keep on escalating the treatment without curing this infection. Then there are high prevalence of viral infections like molluscum contagiosum. These molluscums are generally more severe, widely distributed, and large in size. And one dreaded complication is eczema herpeticum, which may be one of the cause of hospitalization also in these kids. In this slide, we can see this. This is a herpes infection which may manifest in this way. There was one entity when there was a smallpox vaccine which was given to patient, vaccinia. So eczema vaccinatum was also one condition which was resembling this, but with the advent of this vaccination and then complete eradication of disease, we don't see this entity. There are certain other signs, they are quite significant, and one, as a pediatrician, one must note them. One is a white dermatographism. Like when we stroke the skin of a particular person, there is generally hyperemia, and then there is a flare and then wheal reaction. Whereas in atopic kids, like in atopic dermatitis, it is a inverse, it is white dermatographism. There will be a red lining, there is a little elevation of the skin, but very soon, within 30 seconds, there is a blanching and pallor, which is quite typical of this disease, maybe of any atopic manifestation. Then there are follicular hyperkeratosis, small papular-like lesions will be seen all over the body. Then keratosis pilaris, very typical of atopic dermatitis. It may not be associated with the atopic dermatitis all the time, but they are also quite typical, which leads our focus to atopic diathesis. Then lichen spinulosus, that I will also depict in one of the picture. Then there are increased incidence of pityriasis alba, nummular dermatitis, round coin-shaped dermatitis lesion, dyshidrotic eczema, juvenile plantar dermatosis. Then there are other atopic manifestations like atopic pleat, Danny Morgan's fold, which we commonly see in allergic rhinitis. Then allergic shiners, these are the pinkish purplish infraorbital discoloration. Allergic salute, because of nasal itching, all the time child keep on pressing his tip of the nose. Then accentuated palmar marking, they may start manifesting in childhood. And one of common thing is allergic keratoconjunctivitis, which may also be associated in around 20% of the cases. Like this is one, the first one is pityriasis alba, typical thing, very often we see, but we may many times miss atopic diathesis or atopic dermatitis. In second slide, we can see there are follicular lesions in a round shape areas. These are manifested in little older kids, more than 2 years. And then the third picture is keratosis pilaris, where we can see the elevated hair follicles. This is one of the very difficult condition to convince to the parent and treat, because it generally, even with the best of the treatment, it may remain. This is a close-up of lichen spinulosus, which we commonly see in these patients, but we may miss. Then other sign like headlight sign, you can see there is a blanching, periorbital blanching and forehead blanching, which gives like headlight kind of a sign. Then Danny Morgan field in the second slide, and the third picture is of cheilitis. Because of excoriation with saliva, these kids are very prone to perioral dermatitis. There are many phenotypes of atopic disease or atopic dermatitis is not a single entity. There are various kinds of manifestations of this disease. Most common is what we see in our day-to-day practice, early onset disease and persistent throughout the childhood. But there are various diseases like the disease which has a mid onset and resolving. This is a high incidence of asthma. So there are certain trends of phenotype which has predilection for asthma or allergic rhinitis, or there are some diseases which are very refractory to the treatment. But the common garden variety is early onset persistent disease, which we see in our day-to-day practice more often. These slides are very important because we sometimes miss atopic dermatitis for these diseases. And the most common is seborrheic dermatitis. In seborrheic dermatitis, the scales are greasy yellow, and salmal colored, whereas they are entirely different from atopic dermatitis. Then there is no diaper area involvement in atopic dermatitis. Remember, this is one of the most important thing. Diaper area is spared in atopic dermatitis, whereas it is commonly involved in seborrheic dermatitis. The disease is early onset, very early. Within few days, we see seborrheic dermatitis. Whereas, as I told you, atopic dermatitis is a little late onset, maybe around 2 months or so. So many times we see resolving seborrheic dermatitis merging with the involving atopic dermatitis. Then it involves intertriginous area more often. The lesions are very well circumscribed in seborrheic dermatitis, whereas in atopic they are scattered, diffuse. And very importantly, there is hardly any pruritus in seborrheic dermatitis, which is very common in atopic dermatitis. But unfortunately, many times, as I told you, they may coincide and difficult to differentiate which lesion is which. Then second is a contact dermatitis. It can be either irritant contact dermatitis or allergic contact dermatitis. Irritant contact dermatitis basically mainly on the cheek and chin because of saliva, and on extremities if one is using harsh soap or detergent, or they're using some sheet which child is allergic to. Then in the diaper areas, when they are contaminated with stool, urine, or the cleaning agent, or any preservative in the diaper cream. It is less symptomatic, there is no itching, no oozing, just the redness. Then there can be allergic contact dermatitis also because of contact to some particular material which might give allergic reaction. But these lesions are very well circumscribed and limited to one particular area only. The next important diagnosis is a psoriasis. Though we see in our pediatric practice this condition as less often, but we are missing many of them. In psoriasis, the lesions are bright red and loosely adherent, which flakes down with silvery scales. Lesions are again sharply delineated, mainly extensor surface is involved, and nail involvement is quite severe in psoriasis. They have a typical pitted nail. As we know, scabies. Scabies is secondary to scratch or applications of those scabicidal drug that can lead to some irritant dermatitis also. Then there is a typical history of the family also suffering from the disease, or some servant or somebody else in the family. Distribution of lesions is also quite typical in the web of the finger, genitalia, scrotum, all these areas. Then there is a high propensity to diagnose if we recognize the primary lesion and we can see the burrows, and we can diagnose it by screen scraping. Then there are other conditions which need some mention is Langerhans histiocytosis, ectodermatitis, entropathica. They can mimic sometime with atopic dermatitis. Then coming to the prognosis of disease, in our day-to-day practice, we see that most of the cases of atopic dermatitis tends to clear as the child grows. There is a complete recovery in around 40 to 60% of cases, but remember this point that many of these progress into adulthood also. Then there are now being more and more research when in the countries like United States, where the incidence of disease is very high, they are now looking into other pediatric comorbidities. They have found a very high incidence of ADHD, depression, anxiety, conduct disorder, and even autism in these kids, because they are psychologically quite depressed and family support is lacking at those places. If we see this slide, multifaceted impact of the atopic dermatitis, the very common things in childhood especially is sleep disturbance, difficulty in falling asleep, frequent awakening, then frequent intense itch which may make the child incapacitated. Then there are flares of the rashes with various other signs and symptoms. In older and adolescent, there is a affection of work productivity. Then there are high incidence of atopic comorbidities from 20 to 40%, like asthma, allergic rhinitis, allergic conjunctivitis. Other comorbidities like repeated infections, immune-mediated diseases. So all in all, there is impaired quality of life in these patients. in their daily activities, their social functioning, and life course decisions. So if we divide the goal of treatment in various parts, the most important goal of the treatment is repair the skin barrier, then reduce the inflammation and flares, manage comorbidities and secondary complication, minimize the treatment related adverse event or side effects, maximize the medical outcome and psychological status of the child, and educate and empower patients. In our case, in pediatric atopic dermatitis, at least one of the caregiver has to be involved in the treatment and has to be well taught about the modalities of the treatment, their application, because in my day-to-day practice, I see more often the failure is because of improper use of the medications, most importantly, improper use of moisturizers. And it cannot be overemphasized that this is one of the hallmark of the treatment which we miss many times, and we keep on prescribing more and more steroid, whereas the problem lies somewhere else. So we come to the management strategies. First, there are non-pharmacological treatment and then pharmacological. Pharmacological treatments are like bathing practices, moisturizers, and barrier repair products. Topical therapies, topical corticosteroids, calcineurin inhibitors, PGE4 inhibitors like crisaborole, systemic therapy with immunosuppressant, and biologicals. So this aspect I want to highlight more and more, that these important things like bathing and applying moisturizer, they are very, very important. They have to be taught from the word first go. With the very first visit, if we emphasize on all these things, we can cut down medications to a great extent. Bathing, you have to explain that probably generally they feel that their skin is very dry, they're scared of bathing the child, and this leads to a lot of complications. Bathing has to be encouraged in child once or twice a day bathing, which should not be more than 10 minutes. It should be with very mild soap or cleansers, preferably a Sindate may be used, which is better. There are sometimes role of bleach bath. Then child should be avoiding the bubble bath. Child should avoid any harsh soaps or chemicals. Sometime when the skin is very dry and excoriated and cracking, then one may use a wet wrap. Sometime when the disease is so severe, one may have to hospitalize this child. This of course is not seen in our country most of the time. I have never seen such a case, but I have seen just one case of such sort, when you have to hospitalize the child to apply wet wraps and moisturizers in a hospital setting because it is not possible at home. So then there are role of emollient. Another misconception even with the pediatrician and with the parents is that application of oil. They think once they apply oil, they can tackle the dry skin, which is absolutely a wrong concept, because oil does not contain any water and it cannot hydrate the skin. It can act as a barrier, but in atopic dermatitis, the main defect is in moisture formation. Just applying oil is not good enough. Emollient has to be very important in use. This emollient has to be applied within 3 minutes of bathing when the skin is already wet or moist, and which will serve the purpose of moisturization as well as a barrier. It has to be a thick emollient and it should be liberally used, frequently used. So what type of emollient you use matter a little, but how you use it matters the most. How you use, how many times you use. You can in your practice inquire that when in the next visit when the patient comes, you can just ask him to bring the bottle of moisturizer and see how much he has consumed. Then there are certain emollients which contain ceramide as a skin repair. So there are types of moisturizer like occlusive moisturizer. There are three main types: occlusive, humectant, and emollient. Occlusive, just I told you, just like oil, which forms a physical barrier. It prevents the evaporation, exogenous barrier to the water loss. There are advantages because it reduces the transepidermal water loss, but there are some disadvantages also. because they can make them prone to skin infection and folliculitis. The prototype is like petrolatum, dimethicone, or mineral oil. Here I would like to mention that we should never use mustard oil. Many a time we see that in village they use mustard oil. Mustard oil contains allyl isothiocyanate, which is a very irritant substance, and it causes flares of atopic dermatitis like never before. So one must discourage this oil use. Then there are humectants, like they enhances the absorption of water from the dermis into the epidermis. So they tracks the water down into the dermis, from dermis to the epidermis, making the skin moist. These are glycerin, lactic acid, and urea. Then there are emollients, which fills the gap between the corneocyte. They improve the texture and overall look and appearance of the skin. These are the essential fatty acid like linoleic acid, cholesterol, and squalene. The next important thing is avoidance of trigger. Avoid overdressing. Let them wear soft cotton clothing. Reduce perspiration. Use of air conditioners in summer. But have to mention one thing, that their physical activity has to be continued with all the due precautions. Then avoidance of allergens, like there are few allergens which are not in direct relation, like foods in infant and aeroallergens. So there is no one-to-one correlation, but in refractory cases, sometimes we may have to restrict the diet, or we may have to go for immunotherapy, which has a very small role. The whole and mainstay of the treatment is topical corticosteroids. There are different classes according to the US classification, class 1 to 7. The weakest is hydrocortisone, which can easily be applied on infants also, and the strongest is clobetasol and halobutazol. There can be different formations or formulations of these steroid ointments, like steroid preparation, like in gel form. The advantage is it spreads very easily. It can be used on a very large body surface area. It can be used on a hairy part, but the disadvantage is stinging. Ointments are occlusive. They are more effective, very powerful. They have a greater efficacy, and they are very helpful in management of lichenoid or dry thickened lesion. But the disadvantages are they are quite occlusive. They occlude the eccrine glands. They cause sweat retention. They can contribute to pruritus. They can lead to boils and folliculitis, and they are not tolerated in summers. So when we select topical steroids, we have to keep few things in the mind, like severity of disease, area involved, and the age of the child. To begin with, select the lowest potency steroid, keep on escalating till the lowest potency steroid which controls the disease significantly well. We may use twice a day. Once we achieve a good control of the disease, we can keep on decreasing the potency gradually. Then we can use we use them intermittently. In severe cases, like when the disease is very florid or widespread, or there are deeper involvement, then we can use occlusion therapy with polyethylene film. We apply this steroid ointment or steroid cream, and then we put occlusive therapy. It increases the effect of the steroid by around 100-folds, but beware of the side effects as well. Systemic side effects are also common with these kind of therapies. So what are the cautions? Use minimum potency on face. Generally avoid on face. If at all we have to use, we can use class 1 at the most, especially in infant less than 1 year of age. Always avoid intertriginous area in less than 12 years of age. Avoid class 1 steroid at all in younger than 1 year age group, and use fingertip unit. There is a beautiful depiction of fingertip unit. So we can use from the distal crease to tip the finger for an adult person. This accounts for around a fixed number of grams. When we take it for ointment, they are standardized tubes which has a bore of around 0.5 millimeters. and once we take it out from our this fingertip unit, there is a fixed amount of medication which is released through the tube. And I think this one fingertip unit is generally sufficient for covering whole of the face and neck of an infant. There are formulas available in the textbook like which how much fingertip unit to be used on how much area. So we need to be like careful so that we don't underuse or overuse the steroids. So before we start steroid therapy, we have to take care of the steroid phobia of the parents, because this is quite rampant in our society because of this internet. Then there are local side effects which we should keep it in mind, like skin atrophy, stria, acne, telangiectasia, erythema, hypopigmentation. Then ocular side effects like cataract and glaucoma, rarely seen with newer steroids, and very rarely systemic HPA axis suppression, generally in a very severe disease patient. The second class of drug is calcineurin inhibitor. They are quite common in use. They are tacrolimus and pimecrolimus. They are approved for children. 0.03% tacrolimus and 0.1% tacrolimus have now been approved, and there are safety studies available less than even 12 years of age. There are certain studies going on even in infants also. There was a black box warning about malignancy previously, but that has now been cleared. Their effect is as compared to a mid-potency topical corticosteroid, and their advantages is they can be used on head, neck, intertriginous area and periorbital area as well. Side effects are burning, stinging sensation, and some of time like headache and flu-like syndrome can be observed. They are used generally as a maintenance monotherapy, but during the active disease they can be used with topical corticosteroids as well. Now, role of antihistaminics, generally there was one study that use of antihistaminics even in US in atopic dermatitis, around 80% of the physicians use antihistaminics, which are generally almost useless. They have very little role. Only they can be used in a fussy child which is difficult to sleep. For sleep induction they may be beneficial. They hardly have any effect in itching. Then treatment of the secondary infections, we can use topical mupirocin, oral cephalosporin, low concentration bleach bath. They are very effective in tackling the colonization of Staph aureus. Intermittent application of mupirocin to the nails and hands of the patient as well as the caregivers. Then sometime in eczema herpetiformis or when there are predisposition of viral infection, antiviral like oral acyclovir can be used. Then the treatment of molluscum. Moderate to severe disease can be managed with systemic therapies like systemic immunosuppressant. Common is steroids, systemic steroid 1 milligram per kg. Very, very reserved drug to be used in atopic dermatitis nowadays. With advent of newer therapies, newer immunosuppressant and biological therapy, use of systemic corticosteroids is almost very, very low. Other immunosuppressant, cyclosporin, methotrexate, mycophenolate and azathioprine, they can often be used. In many severe cases, many people have a good experience of using methotrexate in atopic dermatitis, and I have also used in 1 or 2 patients with guidance of a pediatric dermatologist, and it gives wonderful results. Then nowadays UV therapy with narrow band is more encouraged. Then there are doubtful roles of probiotic. Now, one word to say is nowadays more and more biologicals are coming into the management of atopic dermatitis. As we are understanding the pathophysiology of disease, there are many researches going on, and there are very encouraging trend in the previous few years. In 2017, a new drug of dupilumab has been approved in the United States. Now it has been approved till the age of 12 years, and studies are going on for 6 years onwards. This is maybe a wonder drug actually, and it has been useful in moderate to severe atopic dermatitis, around reducing the severity around 65% of the cases. One topical drug which nowadays is quite often used in United States, which is a steroid sparing drug, is a PGE4 inhibitor, crisaborole. it is a topical application drug. It is quite helpful in reducing the itching. It is one of the steroid sparing option for the patients. It is helpful in reducing the severity of disease, especially in itching, and it can be used as a sole drug also. The breakthrough drug is a dupilumab. It is a very promising drug. As I told you, it is an interleukin 4 receptor antagonist. It is a monoclonal antibodies and can be given through subcutaneous injections two weekly for 3 to 6 months. It is, as I told you, approved for more than 12 years now. There are other biologicals like interleukin 33 antibodies, and JAK inhibitors also going on in a full swing. There are many JAK inhibitor, oral as well as topical JAK inhibitor, pan JAK inhibitor as well as JAK1. They are now approved in United States, and they are quite significantly studied in Japan also, and they have shown very promising results. Now, if we briefly see that how we can step up the care in atopic dermatitis. In mild atopic dermatitis, topical steroid is the mainstay with trigger avoidance and skin care. Whereas in moderate, once we go into moderate dermatitis, then topical corticosteroid plus or alone crisaborole, maintenance topical calcineurin inhibitor like tacrolimus, then maintenance TCS, and we can add a bleach bath. In severe atopic dermatitis, along with topical steroid, then consider acute treatment some patient like wear trap therapy and short-term hospitalization. Then systemic immunosuppressant like, as I told you, cyclosporin, methotrexate, and nowadays dupilumab. And there is a certain role of narrowband phototherapy. So this is how we see that first of all, we see that once we see that there is a atopic dermatitis, we have to categorize whether this is a moderate to severe disease. Then has adequate patient education been provided? As I told you, this is where we are lacking most of the time. Or is there any alternative diagnosis? We might be missing something and treating as a atopic dermatitis which might not be responding. So we have to establish a diagnosis and educate the parents first. Then intensive topical steroid therapy, which might fail sometime. If still there is a moderate to severe disease, then consider phototherapy. If phototherapy is unsuccessful, then go for a systemic therapy along with patient and caregiver treatment. This slide I will skip. So to conclude, atopic dermatitis is a chronic inflammatory disease that includes periods of flare and remission and may be associated with conditions and comorbidities. Even mild to moderate atopic disease can affect the quality of life of the patient and caregivers, especially when there is a nuclear family. It has a significant impact. Clinicians should educate and involve the patient and caregivers via a written plan to ensure the best possible outcome of the disease. Address any obstacle to adherence and maintain the follow-up with patient as appropriate. Thank you very much, and I'm open to any question and expert comment.
I thought you were going to get some dermatologist or
Anji sir, yes. Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot for a very great and detailed presentation. Sir, we do have Swasti, Dr. Swasti Patel. She's the wife of one of our neonatal consultant, Vardhan Patel, Dr. Vardhan Patel. So she is there. I would like to invite Dr. Swasti to add on and give us some tips and comments on the lecture by Dr. Ravi. Swasti, Dr. Swasti, please.
Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Mohit sir and Nirmal Academics Group, Nirmal sir, for having me over here as a subject expert. It is indeed my pleasure. We already had an informative and lucid lecture given by Dr. Ravindra Chopra sir, so nothing much is left for me to cover. Still, I'll try to give some practical points. So, what is atopic dermatitis? It is chronic or chronically relapsing inflammatory dermatosis. It usually manifests for the first time in infancy or childhood. It gradually improves with the age, and it is associated with allergic rhinitis, bronchial asthma, or both, which may precede, follow, or coexist with the atopic dermatitis. So, etiopathogenesis, sir has already covered. Yes, potential implication of dry skin and theory of allergen penetration. Dry skin can be a factor that leads to micro and macro fissure formation, as you can see in the picture. It allows the easier penetration of the bacteria and allergen. The dry skin causes itchiness, which in turn leads to scratching. And bacteria under the nail can further deposit into the scratched skin. And it increases the chances of secondary bacterial infection. So clinical features according to the age and stage: infantile phase, childhood phase, and adult phase. So you can see in the picture in infantile age group, scalp, face, extensor aspect of the extremities are generally involved. In childhood phase, overlapping picture is there, which involves both the extensor aspect, face, cheeks, and flexures also. And in adult, it is limited to flexural folds only. So these are the Hanifin and Rajka's criteria. 3 out of 4 major and 3 out of 23 minor criteria are diagnostic of atopic dermatitis. These are the criteria. So any resident or fellow would like to answer? Sir has already shown it. You can type or unmute yourself. This is pityriasis alba. Angular cheilitis. Danny Morgan fold. Fold which is seen generally in periorbital area. One extra fold is generally seen in such atopic kids. This is hyperlinearity of palms and soles. Keratosis pilaris. These are the erythematous perifollicular lesions generally seen on the extensor aspects, arms, thighs, and buttocks. Nipple eczema. Xerosis or ichthyosis. You can see fish-like scale in this picture. So these are the complications. Complications are generally in the form of bacterial, viral, and fungal. So bacterial infection is staphylococcal pyoderma are quite common. Viral infection, Kaposis varicella eruption, widespread molluscum contagiosum, extensive Verruca vulgaris or common warts, disseminated dermatophytic infections, disseminated candidial infection, and various psychological complications. So treatment, it is divided into general measures and specific measures. So in general measures, first of all, we have to identify the triggers, because flare-ups are quite common in atopic dermatitis, and it disturbs quality of life, absenteeism from the school, it disturbs the sleep, interaction with the family. In tropical countries, specifically where sweating is more, pruritus is more due to sweat, and it leads to overuse of soap and predisposed to skin irritation. So twice a day cleansing with the mild soap is sufficient. So the question is, can we preserve, protect, and enhance the barrier in infants? Answer is yes, we can. It requires two simple strategies: cleansing and emollients. Correct products and correct technique. The role of bath and emollients. Bath should be short 5 to 10 minutes with the lukewarm water, not with the hot water. Bath with the Syndet bar. Syndet bar is the synthetic detergent specially designed to maintain the acid mantle of the skin. Then moisturizer application immediately within 3 to 5 minutes of bath on the damp skin to prevent the transepidermal water loss and to lock the moisture into the skin. It helps in the barrier repair. So what is the importance of first bath? First bath should be done before umbilical cord fallen off, Duration of bathing should be limited to 5 to 10 minutes. Frequency should not be more than 2 times a day. And a tub bath should be given. And 5 centimeters of hip should be dip of baby's body. Cleansing and cleansers. Cleansers are surfactant active substance that emulsifies the fat soluble particles and convert them into the water soluble matter, which can be washed off easily with the water. So what is the ideal skin cleanser? It is mild, it has minimal interaction with the skin, it removes all unwanted material from the skin, it should not affect the acid mantle of the skin surface, it should be colorless and fragrance free, it should not irritate the skin or eye. All the soaps are cleanser, but all the cleansers are not the soaps. So what are the types of cleanser? Types of cleanser: bar and liquid. Bar, soaps and syndates, as I already said, and liquid. Liquid is generally a watery, it has surfactant, it is having moisturizing property and pH balancing property. Dissolution of the acid mantle and stratum corneum barrier raises the pH of the skin and leading to the irritation, redness and dryness. So how evaluation of skin pH occur in human? So at the birth, the pH is 6. Gradually it reduces and become acidic, and by the age of 4 to 5 years, it reaches up to the 5.2, which is near the adult pH. So regular use of the moisturizer can reduce the incidence of atopic dermatitis. These are the studies carried out, independent studies carried out in Japan and UK. It shows that regular use of moisturizer prevents the acute flare-up of the atopic dermatitis. So mild cleanser followed by appropriate moisturizer is generally required to maintain the transepidermal water loss. So as you can see in the picture, transepidermal water loss decreases with the regular use of moisturizer following baby cleanser, and stratum corneum hydration increases. Other advices are: make the baby wear loose cotton clothes, avoid woolen and synthetic clothes as those can irritate the skin. Pets should be avoided when the baby is having history of atopy or atopic dermatitis. Soft toys, carpets, as it contains dust and house dust mites, it can aggravate atopic dermatitis. We should reduce indoor humidity level with the air conditioner. Food association, if observed, it has to be avoided at least till the age of 2 years. Patient should be advised about the risk of secondary bacterial infection and herpes simplex infection, which two infections are quite common in flare-up of atopic dermatitis. So first line therapy, emollient, spatrolatum jelly, immediately after bath, within 2 to 3 minutes of bath. Then bath should be short. Compress, wet compress is generally used with saline, normal saline, potassium permanganate and silver nitrate if the lesions are acute and oozy. It should be used 2 to 3 times a day for 5 to 7 days to make it dry. Targeted therapy, topical corticosteroid. Low to intermediate potency corticosteroids are generally used depending upon the age, type, severity, extent, location and duration of eczema. Fluticasone is the US FDA approved corticosteroid for children above 3 months of age. Fluticasone and mometasone are less potential for causing local skin atrophy and adrenal suppression, so it can be used up to 2 to 3 weeks in affected area. Twice a day application, and it should be tapered off gradually. So what is the importance of vehicle? Which vehicle to be used? Ointment, cream, gel or lotion? Ointment is generally used on thick lichenified chronic lesions, whereas cream is generally used in mild eczematous lesions, and intertriginous area and hairy areas should be in these areas lotion or gel form can be used. In gel form in some cases can cause irritation, so lotion are more preferable. Then comes the role of topical calcineurin inhibitors. They are used as long-term maintenance therapy. Tacrolimus 0.03% twice daily application on the affected area up to 12 months, and pimecrolimus 1% cream can also be used. local irritation, stinging, burning, erythema. They are mild and transient side effect of this calcineurin inhibitor. So this gradually reduces with the time, and if patient presents with such complaint while applying tacrolimus or pimecrolimus, it can be start with the short contact therapy as of 2 to 3 hours a day, and then it should be washed off and apply emollient, and gradually the time should be increased. Systemic therapy. So what are the indications to start systemic therapy? If it is non-responsive to topical treatment, widespread eczema, erythroderma, frequent relapses, frequent course of systemic corticosteroid, and compromised quality of life, absenteeism in school, sleep disturbance. So these are the indications to start the systemic therapy. So what are the immunosuppressants? Oral corticosteroid generally is started with the dose of 1 milligram per kilogram per day, and it is tapered off by 2 to 3 weeks. And then it is shifted on the cyclosporin. Cyclosporin is generally given in acute flares. It is given in the dose of 3 to 5 milligram per kilogram per day in 2 divided doses, and it is tapered off by 1 milligram per kilogram in alternate week. Azathioprine, methotrexate, mycophenolate mofetil are other agents. Immune response modifier are leukotriene inhibitor, gamma interferon, high dose IVIG, and omalizumab. The miscellaneous drugs are oral antihistaminic. It has some role in pruritus only. So symptomatic relief is given. Evening primrose oil, and antibiotic, antiviral, and antifungal treatment if secondary infection is there. So I would like to share one more point. Judicial use of topical corticosteroids is generally required in practice. Why? Because of local side effects, hypopigmentation, atrophy epidermal or dermal, thinning of the skin, acneiform eruption. Acneiform eruption is because of stimulation of oil glands. Hypertrichosis. Hypertrichosis because of more overgrowth of hair in affected area due to continuous long-term application of the steroid. Telangiectasia is due to thinning of skin. Stria. So we should avoid cocktail preparation which contain high potency steroid, antibacterial and antifungal drug in dermatosis, in any dermatosis generally. First we have to identify the morphology and we have to treat accordingly. These are few side effects I would like to show. In first picture you are seeing the thinning of skin due to constant use of topical corticosteroid by mother for 4 to 5 months. In second picture, if you observe, you will be seeing hair growth in pubic area, which is generally not common in the age of 6 months, because mother kept applying topical corticosteroid for 4 to 5 months for diaper rash, and the baby developed this. That's why the judicial use of corticosteroid is required, and patient should be advised that the steroid is about the length of the treatment and not to continue and use it intermittently whenever any kind of rash baby gets. So this is it. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you,
I think we have,
Thank you very much.
We think we have run out of time.
Yes,
I
sir.
have just 3 comments, 3 questions for everyone, or 3 comments. First thing is, can atopic dermatitis be prevented? Particularly if you have a family history, can you prevent development of atopic dermatitis? The short answer for that is there was trials where they said if you apply moisturizers morning, evening